It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, when you really stop and think about how much of what we use every day is made by machines now.
Yeah, it really is.
Cars, electronics, you name it. So much automation everywhere.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about the scale of it.
And the precision, too. Like some of these machines are doing incredibly delicate work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you need that level of accuracy when you're talking about mass production,
Yeah.
to make sure everything's consistent and high quality.
Right, and that's where things like digital servo presses come in, which is exactly what we're diving into today.
Ah, yes, the heart of precision manufacturing.
We've got this report came out just last month, February 2025, all about the global digital servo press market.
Excellent timing. This is a market that's really evolving rapidly.
Exactly. And, for anyone who maybe isn't familiar, these are the machines that are used for, well, basically anything that needs really controlled, precise pressing, like putting parts together perfectly or stamping out intricate designs.
Yeah, think fine detail work, but with a ton of power behind it.
Precisely. And this report gives us a snapshot of where the market is right now, plus where it's headed in the future, which, as always, we'll break down for you nice and easy.
Cut through the noise, get to the good stuff.
Exactly. So first things first, big picture. We're looking at a market that's already pretty substantial. The report projects it'll reach about $1,460 million USD globally in 2025.
That's not small potatoes.
Not at all. And it doesn't stop there either. By 2033, it's predicted to jump up to 2,546.31 million USD.
Wow.
Big growth. So for you, that's more than doubling in size in less than a decade.
That is significant, and it really speaks to the increasing demand for automation in manufacturing, which is the main driver here, according to the report.
Makes sense. I mean, these digital servo presses, they offer that extra level of precision, control, and efficiency compared to older systems.
Absolutely, and that translates to better quality, higher output, and ultimately lower costs for manufacturers.
Right, so it's a win-win situation. And speaking of wins, the report also projects a healthy CAGR of 7.20% for the period between 2025 and 2033.
So steady, consistent growth for you year after year. That kind of stability is attractive to a lot of investors.
Definitely. All right, so we've got the size and the growth rate. Now let's break it down geographically. Where are the main players in this market?
Well, right now, North America's leading the pack.
Not surprising, right? I mean, they've always been big on automation.
Exactly. The report says they held over 40% of the global market share in 2025, which translates to about 540.2 million USD.
So a pretty dominant position.
They are, but their projected CAGR is a bit lower at 5.7%.
Interesting. So still growing, but maybe not as rapidly as some other regions.
That's right. Now, Europe comes in second with a little over 30% of the market in 2025. That's about 423.40 million USD.
And what's their growth looking like?
Their CAGR is projected at 6.2%.
Okay, so still pretty healthy.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling you're about to tell me where the real action is.
You know it. The Asia-Pacific region is where it's at.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They've been ramping up their manufacturing capabilities like crazy over the past few years.
Absolutely. Right now, they're holding about 23% of the market, which is around 350.40 million USD.
Okay, so not quite as big as North America or Europe yet, but
But their projected CAGR is a whopping 9.9%.
wow, nearly double the growth rate of North America.
Exactly. That's a clear indication of the rapid industrialization and adoption of advanced manufacturing tech that's happening in a lot of Asian countries.
So you're saying there's a real power shift happening here.
Oh, without a doubt. And this trend is only going to continue as more and more companies in Asia invest in automation to stay competitive.
Makes sense. All right, so we've got the big three, North America, Europe, and the Asia-Pacific region. What about the rest of the world?
The rest of the world's definitely in the game, but on a smaller scale for now.
Okay, fair enough. Give us the rundown.
All right, so South America's got a little over 5% of the global market. That's about 55.48 million USD in 2025. And they're looking at a CGR of 7.9%.
Okay, so not too shabby.
Not bad at all. Then we've got the Middle East, which is at around 2% of the market, so about 58.40 in USD.
And their growth.
8.5% CAGR.
Pretty solid.
It is. And finally, Africa's at about 1% of the market. That's roughly 32.12 million USD in 2025.
And they're projected to grow at
A CAGR of 7.5%.
All right, so it really looks like Asia Pacific is going to be the driving force in this market going forward.
Yeah, they're the ones to watch for sure. And within Asia, the report specifically highlights India and Southeast Asia as showing particularly strong growth potential.
Really. That's interesting. I mean, I know China's a manufacturing powerhouse, but it's good to see other countries in the region stepping up their game too.
Absolutely. It shows that this adoption of advanced manufacturing is widespread across the continent. It's not just limited to a few key players.
Okay, so let's zoom in a bit.
Yeah.
What's the report saying about individual countries within these regions?
All right, well, starting with North America, the U.S., as you might expect, is the big dog. They're projected to have a market size of 426.22 million USD in 2025, with a QGR of 5.5%.
Okay, so dominant, but maybe not growing quite as fast as some others.
Yep. Canada's market is a bit smaller at 64.82 million USD, but their CGR is a little higher at 6.5%.
And Mexico.
Mexico is at 49.16 million USD with a QGR of 6.2%.
So US is the leader, but Canada and Mexico are on the rise.
That's the picture, yeah. Now, over in Europe, the growth rates are actually pretty varied, even among the major players.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
All right, so the UK's got a 2025 market size of 71.13 million USD, and they're projected to grow at a TGR of 7%.
Okay, so that's pretty strong.
It is. Now, Germany, they're the biggest market in Europe for digital servo presses,
Yeah.
83.83 million USD. But their CGR is a bit lower at 6.4%.
Interesting. What about France, Italy, and Russia?
All right, so France is at 38.95 million USD with a KGR of 5.4%. Italy's at 36.41 million USD, growing at 5.6%. And Russia's at 65.63 million USD with a KGR of 5.2%.
Wow, so quite a range there. Any thoughts on why the growth rates are so different?
Well, it could be a lot of factors, different levels of industrial development, investment patterns, maybe even government policies. It's something to dig into if you're interested in those specific markets.
Definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
All right, back to Asia Pacific now. What's the breakdown there?
Well, China, as we mentioned before, is a big player. They're projected to have a market size of 147.17 million USD in 2025, with a really impressive TGAGR of 9.4%.
So they're really going full steam ahead.
Oh, yeah. And Japan's not too far behind, with a market size of 48.36 million USD and a CAGR of 8.4%.
So both of those countries are really investing heavily in advanced manufacturing.
They are, and it's paying off. They're becoming major players in this space.
What about South America?
In South America, Brazil's the biggest market at 23.75 million USD in 2025. They're looking at a CAGR of 8.5%.
Okay, pretty decent.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that Argentina, even though their market's smaller at 9.32 million USD, they're actually projected to grow a bit faster with a TGR of 8.8%.
So they might be catching up to Brazil.
Potentially. And it just goes to show that you can't always assume the bigger markets will always grow the fastest. Sometimes those smaller players can really surprise you.
True enough. Okay, what about the Middle East?
All right, so in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is the biggest market at 20.56 million USD with a KGR of 8.8%.
And the UAE?
The UAE is a bit smaller at 12.03 million USD, but they're projected to grow at a slightly faster rate, 9% CAGR.
So they're making moves.
They are. And finally, in Africa, South Africa is the main country highlighted in the report. They've got a market size of 11.31 million USD in 2025. And a CAGR of 8.4%.
All right, so that gives us a really good picture of the global landscape. Now let's dig into some of the other ways this market is segmented.
Sounds good. We can go deeper on press types, motor types, applications, distribution, all that good stuff.
All right, so let's start with press types. What are the main categories here?
Well, one key way they break it down is by force capacity, which basically refers to how much force the press can exert.
Okay, so how much pressure it can apply. Got it.
Exactly. And according to the report, presses with a force capacity of less than 100 kilonewtons or kN are currently the most popular.
Less than 100 kilonewton. Okay, so those are the smaller presses.
Relatively speaking, yeah. But don't let that fool you. They're still incredibly powerful and precise.
So what are they typically used for?
They're really well suited for things like precision assembly, electronics manufacturing, and making smaller automotive components. Basically, anything that requires high accuracy, energy efficiency, and flexibility.
Okay, so they're the workhorses for a lot of those intricate manufacturing processes.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is that the 100 to 200 kilonewton segment is actually the fastest growing category.
Really? So that mid-range force capacity is where the action is.
It seems that way, yeah. And it's being driven by a couple of key factors. One is the increasing demand for precision assembly that also requires a bit more force.
Like for larger components or tougher materials, maybe.
Exactly. And the other big driver is the rise of electric vehicle manufacturing.
Ah, makes sense. EVs have a lot of complex components that need to be assembled with precision.
Exactly. And that's creating a huge demand for these mid-range digital servo presses.
Okay, so what about those really high-force presses, the ones above 200 kN?
Well, the report doesn't go into too much detail about their growth rate, but based on the fact that the lower force capacities are so dominant and the mid-range is growing so fast, it suggests that those very high force presses might be a bit more of a niche market.
Okay, so probably used for some pretty specialized applications.
Exactly. Things like heavy machinery or large-scale metal forming, stuff like that.
Right, so we've got force capacity. What about motor types?
When it comes to motor types, the report highlights two main categories: positional rotation and continuous rotation.
Okay, so break those down for us.
All right, so positional rotation is the current dominant motor type in digital servo presses.
Why is that?
Well, it's all about precision and efficiency. Positional rotation motors are really good at applying force through controlled angular movement.
Okay, so it's like making very specific, measured movements.
Exactly. And that kind of control is crucial for industries like automotive and electronics, where consistency and accuracy are absolutely paramount.
Right, because even a tiny error can mess up a whole batch of components.
Exactly. Now, continuous rotation motors are a bit different. They offer, well, continuous rotation, as the name suggests.
Okay, so instead of those precise measured movements, it's just a constant spinning motion.
That's the basic idea, yeah. And while positional rotation is currently the leader, the report actually points to continuous rotation as a key driver of future market growth.
Oh, interesting. So continuous rotation is going to be the one to watch.
It seems that way, yeah. And there are a few reasons for that. For one, continuous rotation motors can offer even higher precision and efficiency in certain applications.
Really? How so?
Well, they can achieve much faster cycle times and smoother motion control, which can lead to better product quality and less material waste.
So they're kind of like the next generation of servo motor technology.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. And as manufacturers are always looking for ways to improve their efficiency and reduce costs, continuous rotation motors are becoming increasingly attractive.
Okay, so it sounds like a real game changer for the industry.
It has that potential for sure.
All right, now let's talk about applications.
Hmm.
Where are these digital servo presses being used the most?
Not surprisingly, the automotive industry is the biggest end user.
Yeah, I figure that would be the case. I mean, they use presses for everything from stamping body panels to assembling engines.
Exactly. And with the shift towards electric vehicles, which have even more complex assembly processes, that demand is only going to increase.
Right, because EVs have all those battery components and electric motors that need to be put together with extreme precision.
Exactly. So the automotive industry is definitely a key market for digital servo press manufacturers.
Okay, what about other industries?
Well, another big one is the motor and electronics industry.
Ah, makes sense. They're making all the components that go into those cars, phones, computers, everything.
Exactly. And as those products become more sophisticated and compact, the need for precision manufacturing just keeps growing.
So digital servo presses are playing a crucial role there.
They are. And the report also highlights aerospace as another key application area.
Oh yeah, of course. Aerospace needs the highest level of precision and reliability.
Absolutely. So those are the big three: automotive, motor and electronics, and aerospace. But of course, digital servo presses are also used in a wide range of other industries, from medical devices to consumer goods.
Okay, so basically anything that needs precise and controlled pressing.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, so we've covered press types, motor types, and applications. What about distribution channels? How are these presses getting from the manufacturers to the end users?
Well, right now, the dominant distribution channel is direct sales.
So the manufacturers are selling directly to the companies that are using the presses.
Exactly. And that allows them to build closer relationships with their customers and have more control over the sales process.
Makes sense. What about indirect distribution, like through distributors or retailers?
That's definitely part of the market too. And the report actually points to indirect distribution as a rapidly growing segment.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, Distributors and integrators can often reach smaller businesses or companies in regions where the manufacturer doesn't have a strong direct presence.
So they're kind of filling in the gaps.
Exactly. And they can also provide valuable local expertise and support, which can be really helpful for companies that are new to digital servo mesh technology.
Okay, so it's a mix of direct and indirect distribution, with indirect gaining more traction.
That's the trend, yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the factors that are shaping this market. What are the key drivers, restraints, and trends that we should be aware of?
Well, the report highlights three main drivers. First, there's the increasing demand for precision and efficiency in manufacturing.
Makes sense. I mean, every company wants to make better products faster and cheaper.
Exactly. And digital servo presses are a key technology for achieving that.
Okay, what's the second driver?
The second is the growing adoption of digital technologies and the Internet of Things, or IoT, in smart factories.
Right, because everything's becoming connected these days.
Exactly. And digital servo presses can be easily integrated into these smart factory systems, which allows for real-time monitoring, data analysis, and predictive maintenance.
So it's all about optimizing those manufacturing processes.
Absolutely. And the third driver is the increasing demand for energy-efficient solutions.
Sustainability. That's a big one these days.
It is. And digital servo presses are actually very energy efficient compared to older hydraulic or pneumatic systems. They use less power, generate less heat, and require less maintenance.
So they're good for the planet and good for the bottom line.
Exactly. Now, on the restraint side, the report mentions a couple of key challenges. One is the high initial investment cost.
Yeah, these machines are probably not cheap.
They're not. And that can be a barrier for smaller manufacturers who might not have the capital to invest in this technology.
Okay, and what's the other restraint?
The other is the need for a skilled workforce to operate and maintain these presses.
Right, because you need people who understand how to program and troubleshoot these sophisticated machines.
Exactly. And that can be a challenge in some regions where there might be a shortage of skilled labor.
Okay, so it's not just about buying the machines, it's also about having the right people to run them.
Exactly. Now, as far as trends go, the report highlights a few key ones. One is, as we mentioned before, the increasing integration of digital servo presses into smart factories and IoT systems.
So that's all about data collection, analysis, and optimization.
Exactly. Another trend is the development of even more energy efficient and eco-friendly press designs.
Like using regenerative braking systems or minimizing material waste.
Exactly. And there's also a trend towards developing presses that are more compact and flexible so they can be used in a wider range of applications.
So it's all about making them more versatile and adaptable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered drivers, restraints, and trends. Let's wrap up by talking about the competitive landscape. Who are the major players in this market?
Well, the report mentions a few key companies like Genome, Promes, and Kistler. These are companies that are really leading the way in terms of innovation and product development.
So they're the ones to watch.
Definitely. And the report also highlights a couple of recent product launches that are worth mentioning.
Okay, tell us about those.
All right, so one is SEYI's new C-frame direct drive servo press SDN1 series, which came out in February of 2024. These presses range in capacity from 80 to 250 tons and are designed for a variety of stamping operations. And a key feature that they're promoting is their enhanced energy-saving capabilities.
So they're really tapping into that sustainability trend.
Exactly. And the other product launch is Rockwell Automation's Armor Kinetics distributed servo drives, which were announced back in July 2023. This is a new distributed servo drive system that builds on their existing Kinetics platform and offers users a more scalable and flexible solution for developing machines.
So again, it's all about making these systems more adaptable and efficient.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. To wrap things up, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the digital servo press market?
Well, the big takeaway is that this market is experiencing significant growth and is expected to continue to grow in the coming years.
Driven by.
Driven by the increasing demand for automation, precision, and efficiency in manufacturing.
Right, and we also saw that the Asia-Pacific region is emerging as a major force in this market.
Absolutely. And that the 100 to 200 kilo-N force capacity segment is the fastest growing category, fueled by the rise of EV manufacturing and other industries that require both precision and power.
Okay, so there's a lot happening in this space. What's one final thought that our listeners can take away from this?
Well, I think it's important to consider the broader implications of this trend towards increased automation. How is it going to affect global supply chains? What kind of skills will workers need to thrive in this new manufacturing landscape? These are questions that we all need to be thinking about.
Excellent points. It's not just about the machines themselves, it's about the impact they have on the world around us.
Exactly. And it's important to have those conversations now so we can prepare for the future.
Well said. And this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk shop.
Until next time.
See you then.